But I've had some training and education, not in forestry specific, but through the DEP and volunteer time. I actually love the way it looks, not because of how it looks, but because I know what is going to happen there, and that we don't have the diverse wildlife and populations that the state used to have. We've lost a lot of our ground nesting birds. There's a lot of animals that that there's efforts to bring back. And so what I see there, and understanding also that for a lot of these efforts to work, you need to have at least some clear. And you need those snags. And so when I look at what's there right now, I see what is going to come and the life. It's not for
what they failed to do, in my opinion, was to adequately educate people as to what it would look like. Because even knowing what you're saying, even knowing that they use the right studies, even knowing what the end result is, when I first drove by there, I was like, and that shock, is what a lot of people are reacting to, and they did a poor job of informing people what they were going to do and what it was going to look like when they did it.
Getting back to the gun bill, I've got a summary of the gun violence prevention provisions. I don't know if you saw it, but it's fantastic. And I'm looking down at.
Did you get that online? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm looking down at number 3, where it's a description of assault weapon bans. And the first paragraph covers semi-automatic, and there's some 66 different types of specified firearms. But when you get to the second paragraph, it says an additional list of more than 100 new specified weapons will be designated as banned assault weapons. So have you guys seen a list of what these 100 such guns are or weapons are, or do they fall within the realm of semi-automatic, large capacity? Or?
Yes, I've seen the list. Every one of those 100 would meet the definition of detachable magazine, center fire, semi-automatic rifle, one military style.
So a bolt action or something like that would
no. This is and I didn't think this was necessary. This was argued to me. This is classic belt and suspenders. I think they like the drama of showing the gun instead of saying
that's exactly
semi-automatic. But it is.
Well, again,
every single one of those is within that.
If you took a feature from any rifle, any type of rifle, you could technically make it fall within 166.
That is an excellent question. Every single one of those, we've looked at every single one, falls within the characteristic.
The other thing I just want to say for the record, it may sound kind of ironic, but I don't own guns at all. I'm just somebody who's really fervent about protecting constitutional freedoms.
You know what? I've had a lot of people who don't own guns who don't like this. I've had a lot of people who won't. I was in Manchester last night with a gentleman, sat down with him for about 15 minutes. He owns 25 handguns, 9 rifles, and has 30 magazines with a capacity in excess of 10. I went over everything. None of his rifles have military-style characteristics. A lot of his handguns, his father had one. He was served in World War II, and he didn't like the convenience of the $35 fee for ammunition certificate. But
and there is going to be sort of a waiver back for antique and collector. I forget what they call it.
There is, but antique guns are only guns. I mean, antique cars are what, 20 or 25 years old. Yeah. For guns, the federal definition of antique is something that was pre-1898.
Does that include does this include in any way what they call black powder guns, which I guess today
you
can go into any store and buy a black powder gun?
You still can.
A couple of quick questions about details of the bill, Senator. I really appreciate you staying and answering questions for us. Are you only requiring registration of what are quote-unquote assault weapons as defined by the new statute, or are you going to require registration of all firearms?
No, the only gun you have to register is a gun purchased after 1993, before this law takes into effect, that has a detachable magazine, is center fire rifle, so no shotguns, no 22s or 17s, and has a military style characteristic, that being the pistol grip, the folding stock, the flash suppressor, and I forgot.
Are you going to require any kind of fees or taxation for that
the registration?
Yeah. So there will be no tax, there will be no fee, so to speak, if I register a couple.
Well, I want to be clear.
Yeah.
If you fall within the scope of people who don't have a pistol permit,
Sure.
So let's say you just have hunting guns. Actually, not hunting guns. You don't even hunt, so you don't have a,
Yeah, you have a-
hunt devices. Skeet shooting or trap shooting. You have to now go and get something called a certificate of eligibility, which is fingerprint background check.
Sure.
And that certificate is good for 5 years. It costs you $35, and you have to show that when you purchase ammunition. You also, if you want to buy online ammunition, you have to reference your certificate number, so the online seller knows that.
And those registered, quote-unquote, assault weapons will be legal to possess, legal to transport in Connecticut?
Correct.
For legal purposes, for target shooting and...
Correct. The rules that were in effect in the 93 law
Yeah.
apply to this, the difference being 93 dealt with 2 characteristics, this deals with 1.
And one more question about the constitutionality of it. I mean, from what I understand from the Heller decision, and I'm not aware, not even close, but I read some of the decisions, and they talk about arms in common use, guns in common use at the time. And from my understanding, the AR-15 is the most common, one of the most common sporting platforms.
It's the most common
Yeah.
long gun in the United
And
States.
so I don't understand how you can quote-unquote ban that and not violate what was you know.
Right. Well, look, and I don't want to presume to know. One of the things, first of all, the Democrats, Republicans, we all have different lawyers that work on our staffs.
Sure.
They've reviewed this. I do have one person who's handled all the Judiciary Committee matters for years, including all the previous gun bills. We also, legislation like this is drafted by something called the Legislative Commissioner's Office, which is a nonpartisan, they're a bunch of lawyers too.
Sure.
And this has actually happened 2 or 3 times in my now 15th year, where if they believe a bill is unconstitutional, they can't draft it. So it doesn't mean they're right, but they've given it, so it's gone through our Republican Democrat attorney's review. It's also gone through a nonpartisan.
And
Could this be challenged?
It will be challenged.
Sure.
It might be, but we could question who's going to challenge it. I would argue that one of the reasons why, for example, the NRA didn't challenge the federal ban is because they thought it might be constitutional upheld, and that was far more damaging, knowing that 2004 was going to run out, and they would probably have more success in Congress than they would in the courts. But I think if you look at Heller, the Heller decision is good, and if we have another decision related to similar things that are happening around the country, New York, California, Connecticut, I think that helps us, okay, to clearly define the right. So Heller obviously clearly eliminates the issue that some people, I've had some people come up to me and say, well, these people aren't part of a militia, so they don't have the right to own a gun.
Sure.
And Heller clearly dispels that notion, that the right in the Second Amendment, and we have our own Constitution in Connecticut that has to give you the same rights as the U.S., but maybe even more, right? And the Connecticut Constitution is very clear on the right to bear arms. The right, which was established before the Second Amendment, guaranteed by the Second Amendment, is the right to own a gun to defend yourself in your home. Now, the Heller case dealt with handguns, where Washington, D.C. banned, as they called it in the Heller case, an entire class of handguns.
Right.
So one distinction between some of the assault weapon bans and Heller is that it's handguns versus rifles. Now, we don't know if that will be a distinction that the court says has, substantive distinction or not. But the court also, for example, some people are going to argue that when the Heller court talked about handguns, and the Heller court specifically references, Scalia says, the overwhelming majority of people choose handguns for self-defense in the home, and you can't eliminate an entire class of handguns. So we're dealing with long guns. We're not eliminating an entire class of long guns. And some people will probably argue that guns in common use under Heller was handguns which are used to defend yourself in your home. The AR-15, I met with Mossberg and Sons, who make rifles in the state of Connecticut, North Haven, North Branford, around there. They have said that some of these guns are the #1, Mossberg makes the #1 turkey hunting gun in the United States.
Yeah.
That's not banned in our bill. And they've said that the AR platform is the #1 hunting sporting gun in places like Texas and Missouri and other places as well.
And I would say.
Right, but some might argue that that's not the number one self-defense gun and the rights about self-defense. Those are the different arguments that haven't been resolved yet.
Well, and there's another case going through the system right now, actually I have a copy of it here, they call it Heller 2, it's right in the DC circuit.
Right.
Sure.
And we're getting into like a law school discussion here, but it's an important one because it goes to your point, where they start to distinguish between core individual rights and tangential rights. It's your core right to possess a firearm to protect yourself, to defend yourself. It's an individual right. But this case actually does start to deal with assault-ish type weapons. There's a discussion on it. So the issue is percolating up through the courts.
I mean, the only thing I see is that the one thing that's nonsensical to me is that there will be a class of firearms that you're going to ban because of the way they look. They have what quote unquote you want to classify as a new feature, and I can go purchase a gun that is as destructive and as powerful as the AR-15 platform.
AR-15 and the
shoots the same power. Yeah, shoots the same, and the Mini-14 is not classified as an assault.
But it is now. It is now. We'll be under the new.
No, it won't be.
It's got a removable flash.
No, it doesn't. The one I have doesn't have that. It has a straight end barrel.
Oh, yeah, well, the Mini-14 that I fired in that flash version.
It doesn't. I mean, the one that's what it does.
Does it have a shot clip? I can't remember.
You know,
You put it to the back.
when I met with Mossberg and I asked him, why did guns evolve, from the normal gun with the old stock to the pistol grip? Part of it is, but they actually will argue, and they've said today that if you eliminate the pistol grip, you make the gun less accurate, less stable.
Sure.
So, and again, it comes down to who has the gun, right? In the hands of someone who's following the law, who's a sportsman, it can be a more accurate gun. You tell me that, in places like Texas where you're out shooting varmint and you need to shoot 20, 30 at a time, that's a great gun because it's light, smaller caliber, less recoil, more stability. You can get more shots off on that light, more stable gun than you can a gun with a larger caliber, less stable. If your goal is to kill a lot of people, then you can get more shots.
I understand what
that's part of it. You know that. I just want to make sure you hear all the sides that people are talking about.
I understand there's that side. You're going to produce the amount of revenue the state's generating from firearms manufacturers. There's going to be a whole group of people that are either outside of the state, they're going to boycott the firearms manufacturers in the state, so they're going to be forced to leave the state. And then you're going to have an exodus of people like myself, who's a business owner, who doesn't appreciate the infringement on my rights, and I'll have to make a decision about moving my business out of the state too. So eventually you're going to drive people that are law-abiding citizens away from this state.
Well, the revenue argument, people have checked that, and because I was curious about that, and the early returns on what happened in California, what happened in some of the other states that passed similar type of restrictions, is it didn't bear out. What ended up happening is the manufacturers adjusted their platform to comply to the rules and are selling as many AR-15s with the California stock. Soon I guarantee there's going to be an AR-15 with the Connecticut stock. Guaranteed.
And
I'm not saying that's good.
I don't disagree with you about the fact that Connecticut has been chasing people and businesses away for decades. Marlin Firearms was a very good company, again in the New Haven area. They moved 243 jobs. They manufactured guns in the state of Connecticut, and they left 3 years ago, long before any gun control legislation, of this nature was put on the table. I don't have any issue with Mossberg or other companies. Colt has a long, strong history in the state of Connecticut, and I think we should do what we can to try to keep them here. Yeah. Just as we should try to keep all businesses here and all people here. But that's a different. You want to talk about the budget? You and I are going to agree 100%. And I'd much rather have that conversation. But
it impacts a lot of different levels of our society.
It does, and for what it's worth, part of the discussion in the room from our side was knowing that something was going to pass. We need to be mindful of the fact that there are several thousand jobs out there dependent on the gun manufacturers we have in the state.
Yeah, but I saw the president of Stag Arms speak at actually one of the legislative sessions in the Capitol, and he basically said, I don't understand how I can stay in the state when a gun that I manufacture will be now illegal to possess in the state.
And I think of the companies we have, they might be the one that's most likely to leave. They're a relatively newer company, over 200, great success story.
Yeah.
The governor's task force recommended, a lot more, including the ban of the manufacturer.
Well,
So, I mean, there's even support for some of that, believe it or
I'm
not.
sure there's a support for the violation of the Constitution and the violation of all the Bill of Rights by some people. It would seem that it would appear that way. But, I mean, you know, that's another story. That's just, you know.
Well, and this goes to John's earlier point. And it's worth, I think it's worth repeating, because he said, he hit it right out of the park. The same document we're talking about describes the process of how things are done. Make laws, challenge laws, you know, there's an executive that are supposed to enforce the laws. And we're not gonna pass, I'm not, I know John, we're not gonna vote for a law that we think is blatantly unconstitutional. Absolutely not, absolutely not. LCO's not gonna draft a law that they think is unconstitutional. Courts may disagree. Courts may disagree. It's entirely possible that different sections of this gun control flavor part, it could get plucked out. It's possible. I don't think that's gonna happen. I'm an attorney and I understand the law on this front, but there could be some traction on some of the points. And if there is, great, wonderful. That's the way the process is supposed to play out. That's the way
Ed Meyer's bill, I think most people would argue is unconstitutional.
That's the one shot, one
I
gun.
saw that.
And it tax everything, and it mandates insurance, and it was FOIA, everything. You gotta understand, I mean, this gentleman dealt with
And
this.
there's a whole constitutional concern, not around the Second Amendment, but if you take something away from somebody, confiscate, you've taken their property without
That's the
compensation.
Fifth Amendment issue.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And that's why we went from registration to protect your property rights, to say, this is mine, you can't take it.
The one thing I think that is going to be missed in this picture here is that there's a group of people, I'm obviously not politically involved, there's a group of people that are on the sidelines that are not aware of these laws. I think there's actually a large population of people that that own firearms and they're not going to be aware of what's going down in Hartford. And I'm concerned for those people, and maybe you're saying I've already looked at that.
I think,
No, not Class D felons, but
actually,
like-
no, a worst case scenario,
Yeah.
okay? In a worst case scenario, for example, the magazine provision, your first, if you are caught with one and you haven't accounted for it on the form
Sure.
with the public safety, it's an infraction, it's not a crime,
Okay.
okay? And if there's another situation, it's not a mandatory, there's accelerated rehabilitation if the circumstances warrant. For example, your husband passed away, you didn't know there were magazines in the basement.
That's what I'm talking about, that kind of thing, or...
Those types of scenarios, unlike New York, for example, there was a horrible situation, I don't know what the result was in New York, where a decorated, Iraq, Afghanistan hero took a gun in that he thought he needed to register. He thought it was a post-93 gun, it was a pre-93 gun, and by having it, he had committed a felony, which was a mandatory minimum in New York.
Yeah,
We have the infraction rule, the accelerated rehabilitation, which is, if this is one of those mistakes, it should be covered.
Okay.
And that's
It's a worst case scenario.
That was another important part of this package that I was looking for, is not to turn a law-abiding citizen on Monday into a felon on Tuesday. So I cannot vote for that.
But understand,
it's an incremental step.
But when the bill becomes law, there is nothing that turns anyone who's a law-abiding citizen into nobody has violated any law. But, for example, you have a pistol permit. If you carry your pistol, which you have the right to do under the Second Amendment, and you don't bring your permit with you, you've committed a crime.
Yes.
I don't think going on a computer and signing up your name, your address, your permit number, and saying I have 10 magazines in excess of 10 is a greater burden than requiring you to have your permit with you every time